Hello and welcome to the program News at 7, where every story shapes a world. I'm your host, Mahnoor Qureshi. Let's take a look on the top stories we'll be discussing tonight. Pakistan once again makes it clear that future trade and energy projects with Afghanistan are conditional on Kabul taking serious action against cross-border terrorism, signaling a firm stance on regional security and cooperation. COP30 enters a critical stage with countries deeply divided over whether the final agreement should include a clear plan to phase out fossil fuels, as more than 30 nations urges Brazil not to support a draft that leaves out any roadmap for ending reliance on oil, coal and gas. A French Navy commander says Pakistani pilot downed Indian Rafale jets in previous encounters at Tejas crash sparks international criticism and debates. Those are the top stories we'll be discussing tonight, and we'll start with Pakistan-Afghanistan crisis, where Pakistan once again linked its future trade and energy projects with Afghanistan to one key condition: that Kabul takes serious actions against cross-border terrorism. Important regional plans are linked to Tapi gas pipeline and CASA 1000 electricity project can only move forward if security situation improves between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Pakistan and Afghanistan currently have bilateral trade of around $1.6 to $1.8 billion in 2023 to 24, but Islamabad says that this trade and all regional connectivity depends on concrete action against militant groups operating from Afghan soil. The Foreign Office spokesperson also confirmed that scheduling of planned Turkish delegation visit is still awaited. Ankara had announced earlier this month that senior Turkish officials would travel to Islamabad for renewed mediation efforts on the Pakistan-Afghanistan conflict, but the dates have not been finalized yet. Tonight we'll have a look about its security concerns, regional products and diplomatic efforts with reference to it. For this we are joined by Mr. Usman Chauhan. He's a senior economist. Mr. Chauhan, welcome to the show, and I'll start with it. Why Afghanistan is not ready to take any kind of concrete action against the militant groups that are operating from Afghan soil?
It seems to me that this government in quotes in Afghanistan wants to enjoy legitimacy of a full-fledged de jure government, but its de facto recognition by some powers such as China and Russia leave it in an ambiguity where it is trying to hedge between saying that it is a sovereign government and it is helpless against groups in its country. This helplessness excuse cannot work with Pakistan anymore because Pakistan wants Afghanistan to normalize as a society and an economy, and therefore Pakistan is urging politely Afghanistan to do its best and become a self-sustaining and self-functioning government. So this is a question of sovereignty and it is a question of good neighborship. And I don't think Afghanistan is reaching the mark, and that's why Pakistan has remained concerned.
Exactly. But Mr. Usman, how do you see it, how Pakistan and Afghanistan can ideally maintain its bilateral trade that was between 1.6 to 1.8 billion dollars in 2023 to 2024, considering the threats or security forces are facing by Afghan militant groups?
I think that the potential for trade with Afghanistan is far, far larger if they begin to stabilize their economy and normalize their society. But it should be kept contingent, as we have made it, on them behaving like good neighbors and curbing all nefarious elements that operate from their territory. Pakistan has recognized the sovereignty of Afghanistan, but every government in Afghanistan has failed to show that decency. And Pakistan needs to make sure that progress in the future is done with a maturity that Pakistan has been around for a long time, and Pakistan will be around forever. So Afghanistan needs to accept that reality. That is the contingency we're putting on. Economics is good, and geoeconomics, which is our doctrine, is very good, but it is premised on already having resolved security issues. And if the Taliban want to take Afghanistan one step back, then we'll first have to sort out security stuff and then proceed back to geoeconomics, which is something we've been arguing for almost a decade.
All right, so being a senior economist, how do you see that the ranking of Afghanistan on the World Hunger Index or the World Gender Index, we have seen that. How much it is important for Afghanistan to understand the severity of the situation, because we have seen what's happening in Afghanistan domestically and what they are doing with the neighboring countries.
Yes, Afghanistan is the worst ranked in the world on every metric. Literally, everything. And if it isn't, it's because the metric isn't measured correctly. Afghanistan has the worst in terms of child mortality, in terms of high birth rate, in terms of GDP per capita, in terms of water sustainability, all of the basic criteria for running a society. Afghanistan is at the bottom of the world list. Meanwhile, Pakistan is seeing improvements in so many things, it's leaps and bounds ahead. So, Pakistan wants all of its neighbors to do well, and in order for this ranking to increase, the government in Afghanistan, again, government, will have to get its act together and focus on this rather than on questioning the sovereignty of all its neighbors, and rather than trying to provoke them, far larger neighbors, I might add, into confrontations. This is a very childish approach that the Taliban have. They should be looking at these metrics, but it also requires some software updates in their culture. For example, the gender apartheid you see there, you will not have labor force participation, you will not have female literacy, you will not have the basic things that a society requires to survive in the 21st century. That those basic software updates of their culture need to be undertaken, and that government's belief system is not able to do that.
Obviously, and we cannot call it government because they are not the true representative of Afghan people, and the Afghan people, obviously, they are suffering from Afghan Taliban regime. But being a landlocked country, how much it is, we have seen that it is impacting their economy, but if it would continue and Afghan Taliban regime continue to support TTP, how would it would affect its economy?
Well, its economy will never recover. Afghanistan has been in conflict for 40 years, and now it has a unique window of opportunity to push that half decade aside and to go to some sense of normalcy that it had in that region, wasn't a country, but that region had in the centuries before that. We have to take the long arc of history here, and you have to look at working with neighbors as a landlocked country, because landlocked countries, the smart ones, work closely with their seafaring neighbors, that they have connectivity so that they end up being both a surplus producer nation and they're able to get everything they require. But otherwise, if they're so busy supporting nefarious elements that harm their neighbors, then they can't move forward. And things are going to get much worse in Afghanistan because their birth rate is too high and they have had mass expulsions back into their country, which is to say that 4 million people have been sent back from Iran and from Pakistan. On average, they come with about 6 months of debt equivalent to their GDP on a monthly basis. So they come with debt, they don't have resources, and then there's nothing happening in their country in terms of employment. So they're going to compound their own misery unless they realize that their long term prosperity is intimately tied by being a true younger brother or little brother of Pakistan.
Exactly, but when it comes to Pakistan, isn't it justified in linking economic cooperation in transit and regional projects to Afghans' commitment to stop terrorism? Because obviously we have to secure our land or people as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's fully justified because Pakistan does not want kinetic confrontation. Pakistan does not want violence. Pakistan wants to condition the behavior of its neighbors towards mutual benefit. And that means that we want to make sure that Afghanistan realizes just how important its connection to Pakistan is economically. Otherwise, where are they going to get their stuff from? Iran? Iran is even more hostile to Afghanistan right now. They're about to have a serious confrontation over water if they cannot resolve their issues. Same with Central Asia. Pakistan is critical to Afghanistan, so Afghanistan should provide that modicum of respect to work with Pakistan.
All right, but when we talk about or history about the dialogues, we have seen that Pakistan opening multiple channels for the dialogue. Why has Kabul not shown equivalent seriousness? who is like backing them when it comes to economy, because the people are suffering, they have seen it, it is the part and parcel for the development of country, for running a government. What is their like economic plan? How do you see it being an economist?
I don't think that they have that long-term thinking. Anybody who was even basically literate in economics fled the country by 2021. So they don't have that sort of long-term planning. What they're trying to do is de facto rule by fear. As you mentioned, they are not representative of the Afghan people. Well, Afghan people is also kind of a loose term because there are many different nations within Afghanistan, each with their own interests and legitimate concerns. And this Taliban government is not very good at becoming the umbrella to bring all of those peoples together. So it is not thinking in a long term manner. It is just in survival mode with rule by fear. And ultimately, you cannot continue rule by fear indefinitely. You have to bring all of your people into the fold, whether they're Uzbek, Tajik, Turkmen, Hazara, Pashto, anybody. Afghanistan's current setup cannot cater to that. Instead, they are trying to provoke this. I think it's very notorious and brazen that they sent their foreign minister to India soon after the war between India and Pakistan as a kind of sign that they want to work with them. I don't know why you would want to work with India against Pakistan. It is a very bad deal. I think the rest of the world has certainly had a realization of Pakistan's ability to protect its sovereignty, of its military modernization, its amazing air force, its economic potential. All of this is very clear to the world, and yet Afghanistan is collaborating in a brazen manner with India. This is certainly the wrong path for them.
And they'll see the repercussions of it as well. But when it comes to Pakistan's economy, we have seen that considering Pakistan's investment in projects like TAPI and CSA 1000, how much economic loss do you think that Pakistan would face due to Afghanistan's stubbornness?
Well, all it will delay is the potential for projects that have been aspirational. TAPI also has the letter I in it, and the I is probably the most notorious neighbor that Pakistan has. TAPI is aspirational and it's been on the books for about 30 years. Ideally, if all four of these countries from Turkmenistan, so from Ashgabat to Delhi, they could work together in a cooperative manner, there's a huge potential because the energy requirements are here in the two southern countries, and the two, at least the northernmost country is an energy surplus country. You can create a lot of regional synergies and regional connectivity, which speaks to the geoeconomics perspective that Pakistan was advocating. But we cannot talk about geoeconomics until key security concerns within the region are addressed. Afghanistan should realize that it can be far more useful to its own people as well as to neighboring countries if it serves as a stable, honest broker between its neighboring countries. That means that TAPI, but also CPAC, but also BRI, all of these things can converge in Afghanistan and create employment, investment, and all these good things for their people instead of trying to create walls or trying to disturb the peace and not realize that de jure legitimacy would only come by behaving like a legitimate country. So their decisions are completely wrong. And in terms of economic loss, which was your question, again, I say that it was aspirational. Pakistan doesn't need these things, but they would certainly help. Pakistan can continue as it is with its own resources and bringing investment for its own purposes. But there's far more potential for everybody if everybody can work together.
All right, so Afghan soil is being used by the non-state actors, by the third party to curtail CPEC and obviously the Pakistan-China's friendship as well. But we have seen that Pakistan has facilitated millions of Afghan refugees for decades. And don't you think that this effort should be reciprocated, because we have spent our economy on them. We have like welcomed them with the open hearts and what they did in return to us. Not talking about the Afghan people, but the Afghan Taliban regime. Such effort should be, reciprocated rather than we have seen how they are treating the people and how they are, letting others to use their land against Pakistan.
I certainly agree that reciprocity is the need of the hour. When two peoples decide to assist one another in turmoil, the expectation is that when one side has a dependency, it will reciprocate in the better times. But instead, the Afghanis, and I mean not just the Taliban, but even down to the common man, They bite the hand that feeds, and they have shown an ungratitude which comes from a sense of entitlement because they also have that racist ideology, racist territorial ideology, and racism can really ruin your perspective on the world. So, whatever kindness that Pakistanis, ordinary Pakistanis, let alone the government, ordinary Pakistanis have shown, Afghanis have never reciprocated it because they feel a sense of entitlement. So that's why we have realized in Pakistan, as well as in Iran and other neighbors of Afghanistan, that you have to beat out this sense of entitlement from people who bite the hand that feeds. And this sort of approach now is what you're seeing with every, it's not just Pakistan that is picking on Afghanistan. This is not true. Iran is taking an even harder line, showing them their place, that they have to show gratitude and respect, which are free. Gratitude is free, respect is free. But if you have an open heart, then you can proceed with those things. The things that Pakistan is asking from its counterparts are things that don't cost anything at all, just basic decency. But Afghanistan's people have never shown this.
Mr. Chauhan, do you think that is Taliban regime reluctant or unable to boost their economy? That's why they are relying on the third party and letting them use their land against the neighboring countries. What do you think? Are they reluctant or they are unable to do that?
I think your question is more about are they stupid or are they evil? And I think that it is a combination of both. There's a competence issue because long term planning requires a sober mindset, which means that you look at your strengths and your weaknesses and you cover up for the weaknesses and play to your strengths. That competence issue is there because a lot of the expertise that Afghanistan had been cultivating fled the country. They don't have access to that expert specialist pool. Not that it was very large, anyways, but they had some people who are not there anymore. But then there is a motive problem, and the motive reluctance. It is, I believe, entirely within the Taliban's capacity to clamp down on the renegade elements that are harmful to Pakistan. It is totally within their jurisdiction. I think it is a big lie that they're saying that their hands are tied. And they also don't understand the consequences of trying to be de facto legitimate and not being able to exercise that jurisdiction. So they want to play it both ways, and there's such a thing as being too clever by half. And I think that it is a huge gamble with the future of Afghanistan when Pakistan or Iran finally say enough is enough. And that is what both countries have said. Thankfully, there are mediating powers such as Turkey and Qatar who are trying to cool the tempers and trying to tell Afghanistan that it is in your best interest not to play this game. Pakistan is far too important to you for you to be behaving like this. But as you have noted, those talks have not led to a satisfying result for both sides. So that means that they are willing to play the game, but not see it to the end. Play the game of negotiating, coming to the negotiating table next round, the round after, but not leading to a meaningful conclusion because a meaningful conclusion would involve binding them to that responsible behavior. It would be in writing that they have to, that they can and must do the things that Pakistan requires of it. Once they're bound to it, they won't be able to have that roguish mentality which they have used in guerrilla warfare for 40 years. It's that guerrillero mindset, guerrilla warfare mindset that cannot lead to civilian stability. And they have not graduated to that mindset. So they have been handed the responsibility of 40 million people's future, 44 if you add the number of people coming back, returned migrants. That is a lot of people's to take care of. They're simply not ready for it. They're still in a low intensity conflict mindset, and therefore they are the wrong people to lead Afghanistan, and the wrong people to usher a better future for South and Central Asia.
Mr. Chauhan, we have gone through a number of dialogues between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and don't you think that our mediators would be frustrated with the passage of time because Afghanistan is not ready to sign any written agreement on it?
Be a long drawn out process, and the countries that are participating have a very long term orientation. I mean, the mediators have a long term orientation. So Qatar has had much harder things to deal with recently, such as in the Middle East. And Iran and Turkey have very long term orientations. Turkey, in particular, has a very long term stake in Pakistan's future as a brotherly country. So the frustration, if anything, is very minor because the stakes are very high, certainly from Afghanistan's perspective. So even if one round doesn't work, it is possible to set up another one. I don't think that these mediators will ever say, there's nothing more we can do, because they realize that these are two countries that are next to each other. It is not about a phased withdrawal to some other continent, as was previously done in Afghanistan. The people who are mediating are also from this region, just as the two belligerents, quote unquote, are. So it is important for all these stakeholders to keep that stamina. Pakistan is demonstrating that stamina. Any other country in Pakistan's position would probably be far, far more aggressive and far, far more accusatory. But Pakistan is trying to work within a system, respecting sovereignty, bringing in everybody towards a normalization process. So Pakistan has demonstrated enormous responsibility, responsible behavior, and maturity. And I only wish that Afghanistan would even partially reciprocate that, but we've already talked about their inability to reciprocate the kindness of others.
Mr. Chauhan, do you think that Afghan Taliban regime is causing a long-term damage to Pak-Afghan economic relations? Because we have seen their stubbornness over such issues, and or trade is halted due to such kind of issues. Do you really think that they are affecting it for the longer term?
This is a difficult question because who speaks for Afghanistan in the long term? If you agree with me that the Taliban are not representative of Afghanistan, but the Afghan nation or the peoples that sum up Afghanistan are, then ultimately there would be some other setup in the future that would be more representative. You can't be less representative than the Taliban, which excludes 50% of society. It excludes women based on gender apartheid. I mean, you can't be more exclusionary than they are. So if there is a more inclusive system that comes in the future, certainly I presume they would have more long-term orientation. You know, Afghanistan has a history of having monarchs for 200 years plus. Those monarchs did have long-term orientations, but certainly this current setup does not. Now, is that possible to work with Pakistan with a more long-term orientation? It would be prudent. It would be pragmatic to do that. Pakistan would have that expectation. But there is a deep seated lack of respect for sovereignty in Afghan people. That is based on racism, basically. Now, how deep set is that racism, and can it actually be extirpated, that territorial racism? I don't know, because this is something that goes deep in their veins. And if they cannot recognize what is essentially a fact of history, what is called the uti possidetis doctrine that the UN established for all post colonial states, if they cannot put themselves to terms with a future, the next 1,000, 2,000 years, then they will always have this animosity and always have this resentment and jealousy. Pakistan has never shown that sort of jealousy. It's only shown an open heart and kindness. So it evidently both countries are operating at very different wavelengths. One has a future and one doesn't. So they have to look deep in their system, is what I'm telling you, and whether they can extirpate their territorial racism and accept the modern world where all neighboring countries can operate as good neighbors. That's a difficult question.
And they need to revisit their domestic policies as well, obviously, and obviously their domestic policies are, shown to the world what they are doing with the women, what they are doing with the people working there. But we have seen that Pakistan welcomed them with the open heart, and Pakistan continues to emphasize on the peaceful engagement. How can international communities support Pakistan's stance without compromising on Pakistan's security concern? Because it is very important and we cannot compromise on it.
Yes, certainly. Well, the best demonstration comes from the countries that are acting as mediators. Turkey has been a very reliable, honest broker when it comes to its brotherly country, Pakistan. The same can be said for other countries that have respected Pakistan, recognized its importance and its sovereignty, and still decided to also engage with Afghanistan and try to bring cooler tempers. So I think those are the best examples. It is tragic, though. I understand where you're going with this as well, which is that there was a very wide ranging interest in the future of Afghanistan about 10 years ago, where the liberal order types in major world capitals were talking about women's rights and human rights, and I don't know where those people have gone. I don't know where their interest in Afghanistan's future has gone. The children of Afghanistan, the women. It seems that what was being promoted as a humanitarian cause has suddenly disappeared because there's no instrumental agenda involved. That leads one to question the sincerity of that liberal desire for women emancipation or human rights. It seems that that was pretty hollow at the end of the day. But Pakistan doesn't see it like that, because in Pakistan, we are giving women entrepreneurship right now is getting a huge push. Women education, women empowerment. There is no governmental structural barrier to empowering women or to promoting human rights in Pakistan. There may be cultural issues, there may be social content, there may be class conflict. Those are at a very tactical level. But strategically, empowering women is critical to Pakistan and realizes it. Whereas in Afghanistan, there's a very specific problem now that women are being kept within the four walls, their char diwari, and there are households where there are no men. So you require men to operate in the system, but they are warded. The men aren't there. So what is going to happen to a household which needs a man but can't find one, doesn't have one? They have basically crippled their entire economic mechanism, and I mean economic like day-to-day economic mechanism. It is simply an illogical thing, and ultimately it will really come from indigenous revolt. The people in Afghanistan cannot keep going on like this because there is no foreign invader to rally the people against. They really realize that their tyranny is their own, and they will have to rise up and remove it. And there is a strong current in Afghanistan, even within the Taliban, but certainly outside the Taliban, that this regime has to be taken away. It's been 4 years. You can't keep going like this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Usman Chauhan, for joining us. We were joined by Mr. Usman Chauhan, who's a senior economist, and we were talking about Pak-Afghan crisis, economic aspects of it, where Pakistan once again linked its relationship with Afghanistan depends on their treatment against TTP. We'll talk about some climate change as well right after this break. Keep watching News at 7. Welcome back in program News at 7. We were discussing about Pak-Afghan crisis, where we have seen that Afghanistan is reluctant to sign a written agreement. Pakistan has offered a lot of concessions, trade concessions, but Afghanistan is still reluctant. And for talking about that, we are joined by Brigadier Retired Harris, who is a defense analyst. Welcome to the show, Brigadier Harris. Brigadier
Thank
Harris,
you.
we have seen that Pakistan has repeatedly shared the cross-border terrorism evidence to Afghanistan. Why they are so reluctant to accept it? Why they are so reluctant to sign a peace agreement with Pakistan? Why they're letting every time they're letting the third party or non-state actors to use their land against the neighboring countries?
Actually, somehow Pakistan has tried their best to have best of relationship with the Afghan Taliban regime because we are more concerned with the Afghan people. They've suffered a lot. They've gone through a lot of miseries also. But the problem is this is the illegitimate government now for the last 4 years, and they have not established any diplomatic relation with any country of the world. Even not India has established their diplomatic relations. Second is that they want to have their own rule. That's all they're interested. They're interested in money, and that money also illegal because they don't still don't realize that they are now ruling Afghanistan, and then they have to live with the comedy of nations. They must follow the rules and regulations of all the international rules which are applicable in all the countries. They are not realizing this. And then, of course, they have to fall into the hands of Indians. They are misusing them. They give them a lot of attractions. And when they know that they are going to leave them at the 11th hour, Indians are going to dish them. They have been always doing everyone. The way they've done with all the neighboring countries, small countries. And likewise, Afghanistan is going to be left alone when they will badly need Indians. And even then, Pakistan will always stand with them. They should realize that Pakistan is their permanent neighbors. Our boundaries cannot be changed, and we have supported you all the time. We still have been giving you all logistic support. We have been giving you all Afghan transit support. We have been support doing diplomatic support to you when the Americans were leaving. But they are thankless people. They don't realize because they have the same ideology with their TTP and they have the same ones. and they are TTP, and they have the common interest. The money is coming from Americans. They're giving $40 million every week. Chinese are giving them dollars because they're taking out a lot of minerals. So they're having the fun. They're making the pockets full, but they're not pushed about human rights, not about the human ladies' rights. They're not worried about the to support of one people. They're not. They don't have a political inclusive government. They don't have ethnic balanced government. There are no Tajiks, Uzbeks, Hazaras. They're not in the government. Only 40%, 42% Pashtuns are running the country, which is getting now irritant for the whole of the Afghanistan. Even within Kabul and Kandahar, you're having a rip. But still, they want to prolong their stay, and that's why they want to India's hand. That's the only reason.
And that's the problem. They are not the true representative of the people, and that's why people are suffering due to them. So we have seen that other countries are playing the role of mediators. Do you really think that other countries should take some strict actions against Afghanistan, like trade embargoes or actions related to it?
You see, this is very important. Mara, the point is, Iran has to stand with Pakistan. If Iran and Pakistan are together, and Iran pushed Afghanistan, because if we stop have a trade embargo on Afghanistan, and Iran doesn't allow through Chabahar, then they are totally fixed. They can't get any support from Indians, and then they have to go by air to Central Asia, and from there they bring if they bring their goods, it is going to be very very expensive. They can't afford it. And if Pakistan send the goods to Central Asia through Afghanistan, I think up to Afghanistan, it take only 2 to 3 days maximum. If they get from Iran, it gets 6 to 8 days. But if they go through different other routes through Central Asia, it take 30 days. They must understand. Can it be cost effective? No, it is going to be minimum 50 to 60% more expensive. And then you can't afford it. And then you are gradually going to lose because Pakistan is the most happy when we have got stopped doing this embargo on in Afghanistan because they are creating a heavy check on our country. Minimum we lose every year $3 trillion rupees every year, and then because the smuggled goods come back to Pakistan, and then those are sold in Pakistan, it's very seriously affected domestic traders also, because these things will come back to Pakistan. Then these are cheap, and when they import from our traders import from other countries, they're expensive, so they can't match, and that's so they suffer. So we're very happy if these things remain stopped and we don't give any transit facility
All right,
to
all right, Brigadier Harris. Brigadier Harris, we have seen that Pakistan and Afghanistan, have gone through a number of peace talks. Recently, Turkey offered the mediation. Russia has offered mediations, but where do you see these mediation would go in the future? Pakistan is right now. Do you think that Pakistan is having some other options? When it comes to trade, we have the trade embargoes, but do you think that we have some other options to explore rather than just mediations or peace talks or
You see,
offering concessions?
Pakistan, one has an option. We must sort out those perpetrators who were involved in cadet college attack because they attacked on the future of Pakistan, and we have to be very strict on it. I'm sure government might be planning for this because we know their location, we know who were the planners and executors and where they were located. We have all information. The only thing is they have not shifted those important person to the civil population areas, and they were trying to use them as a human shield. And we are trying to avoid collateral damage. That's the only reason we are thinking what all have to do. But this logistics strangulation is the very strong way this weapon. In that case, let me tell you, they can't withstand for 7 days, 10 days, 1 month, 2 months, then they're going to raise their hands. I'm telling you. Because they can't bear this expensive land. People are already over there. And the worst part is, if they go through Central Asia, that means the western side or the northern side of Afghanistan is going to be more effective. So gradually, these Pashtuns, Taliban are going to lose control in Afghanistan and they might come into power because there 60% people are against Afghan Taliban regime. So this is also they have faced a threat. Number two, Pakistan is very happy. You see, we there's no smuggling going on now. Border is sealed. Then there's no narcotics, that's not there. Then there's no terrorism. Then we have no economic prosperity for Pakistan is much better because now no Afghan trades goods are coming to Pakistan. So our trades are much better. We don't need Afghanistan trade or anything else. Afghanistan need is to have Pakistan. That's what I say. It's a time now they when we strangulate themselves that the way they raise their flags when we sorted them out in Afghan territory and they requested for ceasefire, they will come because you should sit on negotiations on a high moral ground and on the point of strength. And that is only either we go and strike and kill their few commanders or we economically we strangulate the way we are doing it now. These are two options. But of
Thank you
course,
so much. Thank you so much, Brigadier Harris, for joining us tonight to talk about Pak-Afghan issues. Now, moving forward to Conference of Parties, where COP30 has entered a difficult stage as countries remain deeply divided over the final agreement should include whether a clear-out plan on fossil fuels. More than 30 nations have already written to Brazil saying that they cannot support a draft that leaves out any low roadmap for moving forward from oil, gas and coal. At the same time, we have seen that the delegates at COP30 are still far apart on cutting carbon emissions, with over 80 countries pushing for stronger commitment. Big players like China, India, Saudi Arabia, Russia and Nigeria continue to oppose any firm phase-out language. So we'll talk about that. For this, we are joined by Dr. Zainab Naeem. She is a climate expert. Welcome to the show, Dr. Zainab. And Dr. Zainab, we have seen the current situation where the conference of party where the countries are divided over the phase-out plan of fossil fuel. What does the deep division over fossil fuel phase-out at COP30 reveal about the balance of power between the rich and fossil fuel dependent nations?
But I think if we need to connect it with COP29, where the draft text included the terminology, which was a very strong terminology at that time, phasing down or transitioning away from fossil fuels. So this COP30 was being envisioned as COP for implementation, especially in terms of some strong language coming out against fossil fuel, like countries were expecting, especially developing countries were expecting that there will be something around phasing out fossil fuels, or at least something in alignment with how the transition to clean energy can be major focus and fossil fuel can get a pushback. But we did not see, and also this was part of the Mutirao or Mushirao, that's what the Brazil government call it. That's their local terminology, which means collective action. And by collective action, this was being seen as something that, will give the world a chance to reduce their emissions. As you know, that UNEP emission gap report was also announced, and under that report, 1.5 degrees Celsius is far away from the world. We are not able to achieve that 1.5 degrees Celsius track. Rather, if we implement current national determined contributions, the countries who have submitted it, we can reach 2.7, but not 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is being termed as a moral failure by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres as well. So I think this is something that where negotiations are stalled as of now. Countries, as you mentioned, they're not ready to sign the draft text that has been released by the Brazil government as Belém political package, and they're also calling out the rich nations to comment and against the political package that has been released. So let's see how, because we have exceeded the time. There was a fire at the venue as well, so the negotiations are expected to continue tomorrow as well.
Dr. Zainab, how do you see it? How credible is the proposal by more than 80 countries for a roadmap to transition away from fossil fuels? And why is it, blocked by the other countries? Why is it blocked by the other parties?
So you know that fossil fuel is one of the very active lobbies at COP, and this time at Brazil as well, there were many. They were actively engaging, and they are very much involved in terms of diplomatically pushing the governments, or pushing pressure on the presidency on not engaging anything around transitioning away from fossil fuel, because they're also a lobby that is very much directly influencing the finance as well, and especially now when US is absent from the negotiations. So in terms of tripling the finance as well, they are very much saying that we are available to finance climate action, but you should not be talking about transitioning away from fossil fuels. Plus there are high emitting countries who do not want this kind of language to be included, because that affects their economic development and growth growth that is totally relying upon fossil fuels as of now. So that is why this is a diplomatic failure when we talk about climate action. But in terms of geopolitical lens, this is extremely important for the countries who are surviving on fossil fuels and not ready to transition towards clean energy.
Dr. Zainab, do you really think that is it realistic for the developing countries to commit, phasing out fossil fuel? They still lack enough financing. They still lack, financing over the clean energy infrastructure. And obviously, we promise here. And how would you do you see the promise would be fulfilled? Because we have seen in the previous COPs, in the previous conference of parties, the promise were not fulfilled.
Well, this time this COP was being labeled as COP for implementation because this was happening 33 years after Rio conference that happened in Brazil as well, and right in the heart of Amazon, where indigenous communities depend upon forests. Plus, adaptation was the major focus of this COP instead of mitigation. Many initiatives were announced, but in terms of mitigation, they have also announced as Bellum political package, and also 100. There is an action agenda item that was adopted from COP 29, where they will be working towards improving industry, energy transition, and transportation. So different solutions were announced, but for developing countries without finance, this is just simply not possible. That's why they have been demanding to triple the finance till 2030. Even at COP29, when under new collective quantified goal, $1.3 trillion were announced. This time it was expected that certain modalities and operationalization of the fund will be announced, but nothing happened. The negotiations are stalled, and developed countries are not ready to commit any finance. Developing countries are even asking for accountability and transparency around the pledges that they have made so far, but they're not ready to commit on that. They are not ready to commit on Paris Agreement's Article 9.1, which is about making them binding upon the developed countries to pay the developing countries who are suffering from climate
Exactly.
action. So without finance for developing countries, it is simply not possible to transition towards clean energy and to phase out fossil fuels. Otherwise, it's
That's
going to
really
be another
important.
disaster for their economic
That's
growth.
really important to channelize that grants as well, for channelize that funding as well. When it comes to the developing like Pakistan, we are the factories, we are the victims of climate change. So for the vulnerable and small states, is this a failure to agree on phase out plan? How do you see it? Or it is really important for their survival mission at COP30?
Well, you know that the developing countries, the small island states, they did not cause climate change. They did not even get a chance to do that kind of development. But the rich countries got a chance, and they did that, dirty development, and they caused climate change. And now they're not ready to accept the responsibility. So yes, this is a huge failure for those countries who keep on suffering. Now, climate change does not recognize borders. Yes, it affects the rich countries as well, but because they have resources to cope up immediately after that, so they are not being affected in that perspective. But for developing countries, there are many island states that will simply vanish from the surface of the earth because the sea level is rising. So in that perspective, it is about equity, it is about humanity, it is about survival of the fittest now. So in that context, if